I've been noticing a problem with World of Warcraft content that no one ever brings up, even though it's a huge issue for a lot of the versions of this game. Seriously, nobody talks about it. This isn't clickbait. The whole point of this video is, partly at least, that no one talks about it. But before we dive in, I need to throw a bunch of disclaimers and some context so it doesn't seem like I'm just throwing shade at a ton of people. I'm not trying to stir up any drama or get a bunch of hate, so please bear with me. A few weeks ago, I watched this video by Platinum WoW, entitled The Internet's Forgotten Art Form, Machinima. It is a super cool video that goes into the history of World of Warcraft machinimas. Videos made using the games engine. From its roots in 2004 to iconic creators like Mindflame and Oxhorn, these guys turned World of Warcraft into a storytelling medium. And as YouTube and internet culture grew, machinima evolved into everything from epic fantasy films to campy rap videos that became massive during World of Warcraft's peak. It really is a lost art now, as Platinum WoW calls it. I didn't catch any of these videos when they first dropped, but after watching his video, I went back and checked them out. The illegal Danish machinima, yeah, I get why it's considered the best one ever made. It is so good and so creative. That got me thinking, what the hell happened? Not just to machinima, but to World of Warcraft content in general. Where did all the creativity go? I started playing World of Warcraft in the summer of 2016, right at the tail end of Warlords of Draenor. I wanted to play since around 2010, but I couldn't afford it. Once I finally got the chance, I dove in and consumed every piece of World of Warcraft content, inside the game and out. Videos, guides, streams, Asmongold, Preach, Mad Season, Soda, I watched them all. I would watch guides on things I had zero interest of actually doing in game, just because I loved learning about it. Then Classic dropped in 2019 and that was it for me. Classic was 10 times better than Retail, at least for me. And keep in mind, I really liked Retail. During the pandemic I spent so much time on Classic, especially in my last years of college. I was living in a super tiny apartment with my pretty big family, but World of Warcraft made it all bearable. And YouTube was a huge part of it. Everyone switched gears and all the big content creators started making content about Classic as well. Fast forward nearly 6 years later and a lot has changed. About a year or two ago I started feeling like the content I was watching was getting a bit stale. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, maybe it was me getting older or close to hitting 10 years of playing the game. Maybe it was just that I had seen everything. But then I watched that machinima video that Platinum WoW made and I saw all of these cool old machinimas and remembered even newer ones like Captain's Grim Struggles of a Barber, for example.
I want you to skin me. What? I need new skin. Like this. I want you to skin me and put this new layer of skin on my fish body.
Then I remembered Asmongold's mount competitions, Mad Season's videos like Pandora's Box, and all the OnlyFans stuff. It made me realize there's still some really cool content out there that was released fairly recently. I could remember videos from the last few years that were cool, but it was getting harder and harder to think of anything really memorable. So a YouTuber who I'm not gonna name dropped a video about the unreleased content in Vanilla WoW. And honestly, it felt like I heard it all before. I went into the comments and sure enough, hidden among the others, someone else expressed the exact same feeling. They said that World of Warcraft Classic content on YouTube is just full of repeats and getting very stale. He might have used some harsher words, but that was his idea. That really got me thinking, so I decided to look into it myself. I wanted to dig deeper and see if I was crazy or if this feeling was legit. After watching a ton of videos, well, that guy was right. He, I, and probably a growing number of people are not insane after all. Here's what I did. I ran 4 YouTube searches. Why is Classic WoW so good? Classic Plus, Vanilla World of Warcraft cut content, and World of Warcraft Retail versus Classic. These weren't random searches. They're 4 of the most common types of videos made about the game that cover broad, complex topics and usually hit on the core aspects of the game. Sure, there are videos out there about specific things like boss guides or leveling tips, but these tend to be way narrower. In total, I watched about 60 videos from big creators. The smallest creator had nearly 10k subs and the average sub count was around 200k. On top of that, I watched about 15 more videos about what version of World of Warcraft should you play in 2025, because those type of videos kept getting recommended to me by the algorithm. so I decided to watch them as well. I didn't watch anything posted before the release of Classic in 2019. And I'm basing this off years of experience of watching these kind of videos as well on top of all of this. So what did they find out? Well, before I tell you that, I need to make the disclaimers I talked about earlier. First off, I don't think these creators are bad people or bad content creators. In fact, one of the creators who quote-unquote helped me reach this conclusion is probably one of my favorite YouTubers of all time for multiple reasons. That said, even though he's part of what I'm going to call a major problem, that doesn't take away from his overall content. I could never push out content as high quality as he does when he's at his prime. Second, I'm not talking down to anyone. These creators have built successful channels, something most people can only dream of. The content is good and their success proves that. Lastly, while most of what I'll say isn't my personal opinion, there are moments where my views will slip through. When that happens, just remember they're just my opinions and please don't get too crazy in the comments. Now, about the research. As I said, I watched a ton of content and here's what I found out. Most of it is the same. A lot of the points made in these videos were just repeats. To break it down, I summarized each video and compiled the main points into an Excel to make sense of it all. The results, I found out that there were only 2 things mentioned across all of them that were unique. One was about how Molten Core was rushed, and the other was about the original tier 2 sets being ugly and later changed based on player feedback. But even then, I knew I'd heard those points before. And sure enough, Mad Season had already talked about how Molten Core was rushed, and Willy has discussed the tier 2 set designs. Everything else, repetition over repetition. The cut content videos all mention the same areas and things over and over again. Gilneas, Uldum, Karazhan Crypts, Mount Hyjal, and so on are almost always mentioned. Almost every video about why Classic is so great talks about how loot felt more important, how getting a 6-slot bag was such a big deal, or how the world felt bigger because your mount came at level 40 and before that you were forced to walk. And in almost every Classic Plus speculation or wishlist video, Mount Hyjal, Uldum, Karazhan, Gilneas, and so on are brought up again. Every single video is extremely similar. It is super stale, and the worst part is not just the same points within one category, they all overlap. For example, Karazhan Crypts is mentioned in the unreleased content videos as something that of course didn't make it into the game. Then in Classic Plus videos the same point is made. Let's add all the unfinished content from vanilla because that's what the devs wanted to do in the first place. What's more vanilla than what the original devs planned for the original game? And even in why Classic is still great in 2025, Karazhan Crypts gets mentioned, just rewarded differently for different reasons. For example, you quite often hear the world of Classic felt so mysterious and that is why it is so good, and from that point they talk about Deadwind Pass and how it felt, and then mention this weird place called Karazhan Crypts that didn't make it into the final game. Same shit happens to all other examples. The Karazhan Crypts is just the one I picked randomly. It goes the other way too. All the stuff repeated in Why Classic is Great videos make its way into other categories as well. In Retail versus Classic videos, they talk about how loot was more meaningful again and how the 6-slot bag was such a big moment. The same goes for Classic Plus videos, where they talk about keeping the leveling journey intact no matter what, and again mention how loot felt more important in a journey, and of course the 6-slot bag mention happens again. It is insane how even phrases repeat themselves word for word. I saw at least 4 videos from 4 different creators that said these exact words. Quote, "No one can define what Classic Plus is, not Blizzard and not even the players themselves. Ask 10 Classic players what they think Classic Plus should be and you will get 10 different answers." This exact opening 4 damn times. I'm not joking, by the end of my research, I could almost tell you exactly what the creator was going to say in their video just by looking at the title and the thumbnail. And even in those rare cases where I couldn't predict it, it was still never something I hadn't heard before, even if it was a video I have never seen. Funny thing is that many of these videos start with their creator mentioning how you probably don't know many things they are going to talk about. Check this out, I'm going to make a video inside my video. a Vatican-style situation. Here's my take on why World of Warcraft still slaps in 2025. My top 5 reasons. Reason 1. The world felt huge. You didn't get a mount until level 40 at the earliest, after hundreds of hours of leveling. It made the world feel so much bigger. Reason 2. Loot felt important. Every drop, even a white item, could make a big difference. Seeing a 6-slot bag drop was amazing because backspace was so important. Your first green felt epic and your first blue was legendary. Reason 3. This was a true RPG journey. You started as a nobody, doing small tasks in a massive world, building your name all the way to level 60. You weren't the champion of Azeroth like in retail, you were a nobody working your way up. Reason 4. The world was harsh, which made the social aspect of the game strong. Remember Hagar? You had to team up with other players to kill him. Skull Rock on hardcore? You'd better get a full party before stepping in. Friendships were born. Reason 5. All content was always relevant. There was always a reason to go back to old zones, raids and dungeons, making the world feel real and alive. Yeah, I promise you, if I go through the list again, I'd find more than one video that makes all of these exact points. Now, I'm not questioning the validity of these points. They're all pretty much spot on, which is exactly why everyone keeps repeating them. I am here to say that this situation is harmful to the game. Before I dive into why I think this happens and why I believe it's a big issue, I just want to point out that what I'm talking about here is only a small part of the YouTube content surrounding the game. From my experience watching videos from a lot of big creators, there is a clear trend in the other videos as well. Most of the points being made are just recycled opinions all over again, in all kinds of videos surrounding Classic WoW. Sure, there are some original takes out there, but they are not exactly the norm. And just to be clear, I'm only talking about YouTube content here. If I were to include streaming content, where streamers are reacting to these videos and giving their takes, which are usually the same as everyone else's, the problem would be even worse. So, why is this a problem? Well, it's no secret that for years the developer team didn't really listen to player feedback. Before Legion was released, people were telling Blizzard what was wrong with the expansion before it was even released. But they just didn't seem to care and listen. The whole you think you do but you don't moment perfectly sums up how things were back then. Everyone, big content creators, regular players, you name it, they were pointing out that the game was heading in the wrong direction. BFA was a mess, people spoke up, and nothing changed. Then Shadowlands dropped and well, we all know what happened there. Blizzard lost over half of its subscribers, and for the first time ever, it became common knowledge that World of Warcraft wasn't the most played MMO anymore. That whole period was a wake-up call, and the consequences of those poor decisions really put the game in a state of panic. But since then, as we all know, the developer team has changed. They've gotten better in many ways, one of which is actually listening to player feedback constantly, and constantly asking for it even. And that's generally a good thing. But not always. A quick example. Players complained during TBC and Wrath that dungeon group finding was too much of a hassle, so the developers introduced LFD. It's very hard to argue that that decision didn't have a huge negative impact on the game. Sometimes players who, let's be real, aren't always expert game designers don't always know what's best for the game. The developers, with their design experience, should know when to take feedback and when to go with their gut. So, how does this tie into the problem I'm talking about? The dev team is still doing the same thing. They're still listening to player feedback, especially the stuff that gets echoed by the big content creators. This is exactly why we got things like the Scarlet Enclave as a raid in Season of Discovery, because that idea has been mentioned a million times by the creators. Same goes for Karazhan Crypts. I'd bet all my money that Mount Hyjal will be part of Classic Plus 2. Along with Grim Batol, Gilneas, and so on. You can already see this happening in places like Turtle WoW, with stuff like Mount Hyjal, Karazhan Crypts, Caverns of Tarim, Black Morass, Uldum, Gilneas, and so on already all in the mix. Why? Because unfortunately the developers have reached a point where they are just constantly taking in these repeated ideas, thinking about safety more than about making the best game possible. Now, please do not get me wrong, I'm not saying these are bad ideas. Classic Plus could definitely be an amazing game even with just these familiar ideas. There's potential there for sure, but the highest potential by far comes from Blizzard actually being creative, doing something unexpected and blowing us away. That was the strongest thing about the company back in the day actually. taking common ideas from around the industry and putting their own unique spin on it every single time, not copying all that they hear all the damn time. Sure, a super well done Green Battle raid area and dungeon that respects the spirit of Classic would be awesome, but you know what would be even better? If they did the same level of polish, quality, but with something we didn't see coming at all, something that wasn't predictable and that wasn't already done in a later version of the game, something that would spark new conversations, something that could be the fuel for new stories, something that would make Classic Plus something more beyond just a packaging of ideas we have already seen in Cataclysm but were originally planned for vanilla. And that kind of unique stuff will be there, but it will be the small part, maybe a dungeon or something like that. The big dungeons, the big raids, the big zones, there is no doubt in my mind it will be about these already seen areas and stories. And it is such a shame. There is so much left in the world of Azeroth to explore that was never seen before. So many actually untold and unfinished stories from back in the day, even from the old Warcraft days. Stories that would work perfectly in a classic environment. And that's not even the only issue. If all you do is listen to the community's constant requests and give them exactly what they ask for every single time, you're just going to have a player base full of people who only want those changes and those things added to the game. Players who always agree with you. And that is a big problem actually. That means no new players. That means no real evolution. Sure, the existing players will be happy, but the developers should be thinking about how to keep the current player base happy while also finding ways to bring in new people and make this game thrive long term. If they came up with something totally fresh, something no one expected, now that would really grab people's attention. That is the problem retail has as well. They make the game to appeal to the current player base, and that is good, but it only appeals to them. And over time, that will lead to big problems. Don't get me wrong, they want to make a great game, and their hearts are in the right place. But the reality is that people who love Classic WoW, me included, don't always have the right perspective on what would be best for the game. Sometimes we simply don't know what's best. Hell, even the best game designers out there don't always hit the mark. So if you sometimes shouldn't listen to those people, why would you always listen to a bunch of nerds like myself that have much less knowledge and have wanted things that were very bad for the game in the past? It's understandable to a point though. When every big content creator keeps making the same videos, constantly pushing the same ideas, and their fans keep liking and sharing it, it makes sense why the developers might feel hesitant to take risks. After all, if the community is asking for the same things over and over again, why would you risk company money on something totally new, right? And that mentality is a plague on the gaming industry in general. That is why we get so many remakes and remasters, so many sequels, and almost never new IPs, new ideas, and any kind of real creativity. That is why we will never see Warcraft 4. Why risk doing something new, being creative, when you are 99% sure that doing the same thing again and again will, at least for now, make a lot of profit? The second major issue is that, in my opinion, all this stale content is really hurting the hype players feel for the game, and that matters. I can speak for myself at least when I say that whenever I watch something unique, like the most terrifying villain of Classic by Jedi Warlock, shout out to him by the way, amazing creator, that's when I get the itch to jump back into World of Warcraft, even if I have been a little bit bored with the game lately. That doesn't happen when I see the 4th unfinished content of Vanilla WoW video this month, talking for the millionth time about the Ashara underwater super secret unknown dark portal. Yeah, old man, we have heard that story 1,000 times before. It's time to take your pills. There is no doubt in my mind that content creators have a huge impact on how healthy an MMO or any multiplayer game is. If creators like Asmongold, Preach, Mad Season, Soda Poppin, Creeperian, Pyromancer, Pint, and others who've quit retail WoW were still consistently making content for it, the effects would be huge, and you know it. Whether you like it or not, that's the reality. But there's a big difference between these guys coming back and doing the innovative stuff they used to do versus just rehashing the same old ideas. And this is the exact kind of staleness that drove people away, leaving behind a barren wasteland of repetitive content. It's a self-perpetuating issue. Any game or version of WoW will eventually become stale without innovation. When that happens, the truly innovative creators get burned out and leave, and only the players who would have stuck around anyway remain. This staleness in content creation is actually a symptom of a bigger issue. The last time Blizzard really did something new was almost 10 years ago when they added Mythic Plus in Legion. Since then, it's been mostly the same rehashed ideas in every version of WoW they released. And it's arguably not just Warcraft but all of their game, and that is insane. So why do I think this is happening? Why is Jedi Warlock such a rare outlier, a World of Warcraft content creator, putting real effort into researching lesser known sides of the game and coming up with fresh topics for his videos? Well, for one, as I said before, it's the environment itself. Talking about any version of Classic means talking about a version of the game we already know inside and out. These versions have been explored to death, trying to create new content around them leads to nothing but staleness. The game isn't giving creators anything bold and fresh to talk about at any time. This might be a bit of a stretch, but I also think the lack of competition between creators is also playing a big role. If there's this unspoken rule that almost nobody is really doing anything new, then it's much easier to just make your third The State of Classic WoW in 2025 video this month. Of course, I'm exaggerating a bit, but you get what I mean. The algorithm doesn't help either. It rewards quantity over quality. Creators are pushed to upload constantly just to stay relevant. And honestly, who can blame them? For a lot of people, turning YouTube into a job is the dream. And once you're there, you'll do whatever it takes to keep that momentum going. Playing by the algorithm rules becomes second nature. As long as your videos aren't total trash and are frequent, mid-tier content will often perform better than spending weeks crafting one single masterpiece. But honestly, at the core of it all, I think it also boils down to pure laziness. And I feel confident in saying that because there are still content creators out there doing unique, impactful things in the community, like Jedi Warlock that I just mentioned, or Soda Popping with his OnlyFans events, WoW's Darkest Secret by House Hexagon. Seriously, if you haven't watched that video, do it. The Machinima video from Platinum WoW, Mad Season's Pandora box, that was pure cinema, even something as Grace for Days and his motion capture streams. Creativity and effort are not a limited resource. It's not even avoiding massive effort or needing groundbreaking originality. Just watch those examples and you'll see what I mean. Instead of making a video talking about your ideas for Classic Plus in which you mention that for new zones you want Mount Hyjal, the Emerald Dream, Caverns of Time, Uldum, Gilneas and so on, maybe you do what I did and search the internet for about 5 minutes and come up with this. Jimmy Blackridge was the son of a farming family in Westfall. One day, on a break from farm work, he went fishing with 2 of his friends along the coast. Fate, however, had other plans. A bloodsail buccaneer battleship, the Garrote, happened to be plundering the area, and the crew kidnapped all 3 kids. Over the years, they were forced by Captain Jariah's Bloodvein to become fighters, raiding Defias Brotherhood strongholds and ships. Jariah's had a personal vendetta against Edwin Van Cleef, having been cheated by him in the past, losing a lot of gold and even the girl he loved. One day, after a fight near Westfall, Jimmy discovered his parents were held hostage by the Defias in one of their hideouts. He rescued them, but wanted no part in piracy anymore. However, Captain Bloodvein wasn't willing to let anyone leave his crew, so Jimmy challenged him to a duel to the death and won. Furious, the crew of the Garrote planned to kill Jimmy and his parents, but his friends, using their magic and skills, helped them escape to the safety of Sentinel Hill. Years later, Jimmy, now back to his farm life, tells the story of his past to Kira Songshine, the girl he's had a crush on since the beginning. He even considers writing a book about his adventures as a bloodsail buccaneer. But here's the twist. Bloodvein somehow reanimated as an undead, returning with a singular goal: revenge on Edwin Van Cleef. His obsession is so intense that even after learning that he was killed by adventurers, he refuses to accept it, blinding himself to reality. His new plan is to wipe out every living being anywhere Van Cleef might be hiding. This includes Westfall, Stormwind, Stranglethorn Vale, the Swamp of Sorrows, and even the Red Ridge Mountains. Word on the streets is that Bloodvein is working with rogue members of the Royal Apothecary Society to create a plague strong enough to wipe out entire regions, if not the whole of the Eastern Kingdoms. The rumors are too serious to ignore. Players must travel to the Plunder Isle to investigate a new Bloodsail Buccaneer dominated zone to uncover the truth. Turns out the rumors are true. Jarius has been using the gold he plundered over the years to fund these rogue undeads in their efforts to develop a plague strong enough to kill off the entire Eastern Kingdoms. Beyond the general quests on the island, players will delve into a 10-player dungeon. The Bloodsail Hold is the central command point of the Bloodsail Buccaneers, where Jarius has been secretly researching this plague. The Bloodsails won't trust outsiders, so players will have to battle their way through the fortress to face Jarius and whatever horrors he cooked up beneath the hold. It took me way longer to write this down than it took me to come up with the idea. 5 minutes of research and a little creativity. Imagine what could be done with a few hours of digging into the lore and thinking outside the box. Imagine what ideas would the developers could see moving through the community, the ideas they could use, and the confidence they could have in being original and creative. Not to mention the obvious, but of course, unique and interesting videos are also much more fun to watch than the repetitive stuff we all get. So, just as a viewer too, it's something to think about. Anyway, let me know what you think of this in the comments down below. I would love to hear what you think about it. And if you listened all the way through, a huge thanks to you. It matters a lot. Please subscribe if you liked the video. I will make more videos and I will do my best.